What's up everyone, it's Kenji here, and in this video I thought I'd share some of the resources that I found most useful when I was recruiting for investment banking. So I've basically split it up into four main areas. The first one has to do with free resources that are directly related to investment banking. The second one are free resources that are more, say, general knowledge or business related stuff, but I still think are beneficial. Then thirdly, we'll look at some of the for-pay investment banking resources. And lastly, some for-pay resources that are more general knowledge. So I'll leave them all in the description so you guys can take a quick look at those. So here we go. Alright, so starting off with some free investment banking resources. One that I found very useful was a guide by Vanderbilt University, which is a very good school, by the way. And anyways, they had an investment banking guide, and in it, it's around 30 pages long, and they cover all essential information that you might need for recruiting, right? So things like definitions of what an investment bank is, what departments there are, what skills you should have, other things like that. And then it goes into more recruiting related stuff, like what might be some interview steps. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite cover the interviews itself, which is a bit of a shame, but I've made a video on that. If you want to check it out, I'll leave it somewhere up here about my hire views and how that was like. The second one is Mergers and Acquisitions, which is basically a website for investment banking, and they got all sorts of things like resume templates to interview questions. So let's just take a closer look at one of the interview questions together so you can see how detailed it is. So here basically there's a table of contents, and as you can see it's nicely broken down into the types of questions out there. So if we click on finance interview questions, say, they actually provide the question with a detailed answer, which is really appreciated. Some other useful resources that are similar website kind of content are Wall Street Oasis, which is basically like a forum for people that are keen on investment banking. And then another one's Investopedia. You've probably heard of Investopedia already, but they do offer good definitions of things like what a DCF is, what beta means, what alpha means, which are all sort of finance terms that nobody really explains to you, right? And a third free resource that I thought I'd share has to do with a YouTuber actually. I don't know this person myself, but I thought it was very useful. His name is Afzal Hussein. And basically, if you haven't seen his videos, you probably have, but if not, he basically has everything that's related to recruiting, especially for finance related roles. He also worked at Goldman Sachs for a while, so obviously he knows what he's talking about. I think it's very good. I used it myself, so yeah, feel free to check that channel out. Alright, so moving on with some more free resources, but this time around more general / business / finance oriented stuff, which I thought was quite useful. It's not directly related to investment banking, but I think it was still quite beneficial on the whole to have a better macro understanding of things. So first one's actually a YouTube video by Bill Ackman. If you don't know who Bill Ackman is, he's a billionaire hedge fund manager, and he basically breaks down everything that relates to finance and investing in just under 1 hour. So overall, I think the video is great for understanding financial accounting and corporate finance, which are basically the core of investment banking. If you understand those two things well, you're gonna be good at investment banking or the job itself. Now, obviously, it's just 1 hour long. It's a YouTube video after all, but nonetheless, I think it was a really useful resource. Continuing with videos, another very useful YouTube video I found was by Ray Dalio, who's another hedge fund manager. He founded Bridgewater Associates, which is now one of the biggest hedge funds in the world. And basically he talks about all things about the economy and how he understands it, as well as how he's made his money through it, right? So it's titled How the Economic Machine Works, and in it he narrates it and he has some animations to help with it. So I thought that was really, really handy. I felt like it was a lot easier to learn than through a textbook, and at the same time it was a lot more fun, right? And he talks about all things from debt cycles to economic crisis, recessions, other things like that. And yeah, I'm not just saying it's good myself. I mean, it does have 20 million views, so I imagine it's done fairly well. And if you're more into reading stuff, he does have a full-on 270-page paper on really the same topic, but it's obviously in a lot more detail. I did print it out a couple years ago and I did take some notes on it. I thought it was really valuable to understand debt cycles, inflations, why recessions happen, why some countries do well, some others don't, and other things along those lines. Now, I realize most of you aren't that bothered to read the whole thing, but nonetheless, I'll just leave it out there in the description in case someone's actually interested. Alright, so we're done with the free section and now moving on to some for-pay investment banking resources. So the first one is a book. Actually, it's a book that I bought myself. It's called The Investment Banking, Valuation, Leverage Buyouts, and Mergers and Acquisitions. I don't think it really matters which edition you buy. But basically, it's two senior bankers. I think one of them worked at UBS. I can't remember where the other worked. And basically, they just got together and made this book on investment banking, right? And I thought this was the most useful investment banking resource that I found. That said, it doesn't really talk about recruiting, rather it's more focused on what the job is like, how to actually value a company, how to go about doing the Excel work, the PowerPoint, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so it doesn't really go over the interviews of how to get the job itself, but rather it's more related to the content, right? Obviously, if you do master the content, odds are if you get to an interview, you're gonna be able to do well in it, right? So at the same time, it's sort of directly related, if you will. Depending on which edition you buy, you do get a PowerPoint and an Excel files with investment banking valuations. So here's the PowerPoint with the instructions, and then you get 2 Excel files, one that's just a template and one that's complete with the different types of valuation methods there are, as well as some leverage buyouts and other things like that. And as you can see inside the book here, it's super detailed. It goes through all the steps you need to value a company using all the different methods. So it's definitely not a book that you read on the couch, but rather that's something that you're in front of your desk and you're having to take notes on it, right? Another resource that I bought was on Udemy, which was actually just an online course. I think it cost around $12 because it was discounted at the time. And it gave me a very good understanding of investment banking, all the way from the different divisions within an investment bank to types of market players there are and how to use Excel, right? So it was really quite comprehensive. Unfortunately, it didn't quite cover the recruiting aspect, which was something that I thought was missing, but nonetheless, I think it was quite useful. And the fact that it didn't really have much of the recruiting stuff is what prompted me to start my own course, which I'll leave in the description. In short, the course goes through every single step in the application process for banking. It's basically the course that I wish I had when I was going through the process myself. It goes from the different divisions of an investment bank, what majors and courses you should take in university, to the types of work experience you should aim for before banking, all the way to preparing for the interviews, where I walk you through all types of questions you might get and how you should go about answering them. I also include interviews with some of my colleagues that have worked in investment banking, so you can get a different insight into how they went about getting their jobs. And lastly, I provide some viable alternatives in case you're not able to break into investment banking. Throughout, I also provide downloadable resources like free templates, formulas, and more. So feel free to check that out if you're interested or if you just want to support this YouTube channel. I will say though that there's some other for-pay resources like financial modeling bootcamps and other things along those lines. But to be honest, I didn't take them myself, so I don't really feel comfortable recommending them to you guys, right? Maybe they're good, maybe they're not. Honestly, I just can't say, right? I have to say that out of the people that I met, say working at Goldman Sachs, I didn't really meet too many that had done any of these boot camps. Maybe they just weren't open to saying that they did them, but that's just been my experience. I personally thought they were just rather expensive at around $200, so I never got them, but feel free to check them out on your own and do your research if you think they're right for you. Alright, so moving on to a last section, which is just general resources for pay. And the first one I'd recommend is a magazine called The Economist. You've probably already heard of it, to be honest. But basically, I used to read it every week. I still do, if I'm honest. And I think it's a great resource. Basically, it goes over all of the things that have to do with the business world. It covers politics, business, finance. So it's basically the whole package. And if you're hungry for knowledge, it's definitely right for you. I will say though that it's not like most magazines where there's more pictures than writing. Here it's definitely the opposite, as you can see, more writing than pictures. So yeah, keep that in mind. So you're probably wondering, Kenji, why is this relevant to investment banking? Why should I care about what's happening in politics, say? And the reality is that when you get to an interview at an investment bank, odds are they're going to ask you about some new stuff. So for instance, they might say, hey, can you tell me about some recent financial news that you've read related to the financial markets? And obviously, say if you're on Instagram all the time, you're not gonna know, right? And that's when something like The Economist can come handy, where you'll be able to talk about some things. And odds are maybe they've read The Economist too. And if you name drop, say I was reading The Economist last week or something like that, they're gonna realize that, well, you're probably well versed and you're literate when it comes to financial related topics, right? The second resource, which is actually quite similar to The Economist, is the Financial Times / the Wall Street Journal. So they're both finance newspapers. I guess you probably already know them. But anyways, the Financial Times is typically more for people that are outside of the US, whilst the Wall Street Journal is more US focused. So when I was in Wall Street, most people just read the Wall Street Journal. In Europe, where I am now, people read the Financial Times more often, right? They're both for pay. They're rather expensive, not gonna lie. But if you're still in university, odds are you can get a student discount through your university or maybe independently as well. So yeah, those are the resources that I found most useful when I was recruiting for investment banking. If you feel like you have some resources that I didn't quite share, then feel free to put them in the comments, At the end of the day, if it helps everyone out, then that's obviously good. I'll try to pin that and put that on top of the comments list so that everyone can enjoy it, right? So So that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll hopefully catch you in the next one.